Welcome, everybody. We are now live streaming. Welcome, everybody, to this very special Victoria Levy Q&A. We'll give everybody a minute or two just to join. So we will take our time here, and I can get my slides shared in the meantime. Awesome. I can see everybody slowly streaming in. Welcome, everyone. Take a minute or two. Everybody can join. All right. Welcome, welcome. Okay. We are 2 minutes past the hour, so I think we are basically ready to go. Okay, welcome. Like I said, thanks so much for joining our special Q&A on Victoria's new 7.5% short-term rental levy. We're live streaming and recording, so if for any reason you get disconnected at any stage, you can head straight to our YouTube channel. Check out youtube.com at Hospitable. We're live streaming there, so you'll be able to join and follow along from there if you get disconnected from Zoom. We'll kick things off with some background on the new tax and how Hospitable is going to help you finish with some Q&A. We have Liz and Andrew from the State Revenue Office of Victoria, which I'm super privileged to have these guys joining. An absolute wealth of knowledge. How's it going, Liz and Andrew?
Hi, Ethan.
Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah,
everyone.
great. Really good. Thanks, Ethan. And from our perspective, we really appreciate you taking the initiative to enable us to chat with you and your customers, I guess. So yeah, important issues to talk about, but thank you for taking the initiative.
No, definitely. I mentioned before we just started going live that I joined your webinars, and we'll have a link to our slides later for the access for the State Revenue Office website. So there'll be more information accessible there. But I had a chance to jump on a couple of the webinars that you guys have been running, and those were really informative. I think that's probably something that is definitely not expected of state revenue officers to be running and getting so much information out there. So yeah, like I said, thanks so much for joining us.
Our pleasure.
So the new 7.5% short-term rental levy, what is it? So I guess at a very high level, and for any of you that are joining today, obviously very impactful for your short-term rental business. But there's been a lot of questions and there's a lot of unknown as to exactly how this will impact you and what it is. So at the high level, this is a 7.5% levy that applies to all Victorian short-term rental reservations made from the 1st of January 2025, which we are coming up to very quickly, just 2 weeks out. It applies to the total booking fees paid, so including fees, charges, cleaning fees, GST, and that is for all short-term rental reservations, like I mentioned. And finally, there are some exemptions. So I think that has probably been, from what I've seen across the board, probably the most common question that we've had as to, am I exempt? What clarifies and what qualifies something for being exempt? And then I guess getting into like the niche and unique scenarios as to what might be exempt from the levy. So one example, and probably the most common one, is a principal place of residence may be exempt, and that owners must provide a declaration. Andrew, could I throw that to you just to give us a little bit more information on exemptions and some of the more common questions that you get there?
Yeah, sure. And you make very valid points, Ethan. So, yes, there is an exemption for short stays in a person's principal place of residence. The sort of the way that we're looking at things from a tax policy perspective is that if I was to vacate my principal place of residence for a short period of time and to make it available for short-term rentals while I'm away, the short stay levy wouldn't apply. Contrasting that with a situation where I have, let's say, a separate part of my home, the building, that is sort of set up separately as like another apartment or a cottage or something, that wouldn't be excluded from the short stay levy provisions. And so your choice of words in your third bullet point there, may be exempt, is really important. And we are getting a lot of questions about the principal place of residence exemption. But ideally, the exemption applies when the accommodation is provided in your home. The exemption doesn't apply where the accommodation is provided somewhere on the same piece of land as your home, but not in your home, if that sort of helps. The other
Yeah,
exemption
definitely.
is about commercial residential premises, which is a GST phrase and is really about whether the provision of accommodation is a taxable supply from a GST perspective.
Okay.
Commercial residential premises are hotels, motels, rooming houses, hostels, caravan parks. But again, lots of confusion from a short stay levy perspective about people that are running a business where potentially their land is zoned commercial. Are they operating commercial residential premises? And in most of the examples that I've certainly seen, and happy for Liz to add a little bit here, most of them will not satisfy that definition. There is a ruling, GSTR 2012/6, and everybody that's on this webinar should read that ruling if they're a short-term accommodation provider, to be able to make a judgment about whether their premises are short-term accommodation, are commercial residential premises. And your comment about the declaration is true. So if I rent a property and it's my principal place of residence and I provide it through Hospitable Premium, I think it was you were saying, Ethan,
Yep.
then I would need to provide a declaration to you to say, don't charge short stay levy on bookings that you take
Awesome.
for my property. The declaration's not
Okay.
yet available. It shouldn't be far off on our website.
Okay, awesome. I think that's going to be a very popular Q&A question. So we might loop back to that one a little bit towards the end, and we can go through that in more detail. And we'll make
Absolutely.
sure that there's plenty of time for Q&A. So please, at any stage, if you have a question, please throw it in the chat. There's a Q&A area there within Zoom where you can ask your question, and we can make sure we can cover those live. You can also raise your hand at any point, and then we can bring you on stage if you want to ask in person too. To continue on, who is responsible for collection? That's probably the next question as to like what's getting raised most frequently. And according to the state of Victoria government, the booking platform is responsible for collecting the levy and remitting the levy. And again, there's nuances as to exactly when and where this is going to apply. But when you're interacting with Airbnb, you'll notice that they, as a booking platform, are going to be responsible for presenting that to the guest and ensuring that that is being collected for your Airbnb reservations, as an example. Then the next most common question we're getting asked is, what about direct? If you saw our year in review on Hospitable at all, if you haven't had a chance to check that out, please jump on our YouTube channel and have a look. But one of the real highlights from that was the direct booking portion of it. So we at Hospitable had a 440% increase in our direct reservations. And globally, we past the 28 million US dollar direct booking mark. So that's a train that is definitely not going to slow down anytime soon. Direct bookings are going to continue to grow. And there is also going to be more and more consideration for regulations and levies across the world. We need to be making sure we're doing our best to support you here at Hospitable. There's definitely be some confusion in the industry between us, competitors, different software options as to who should be responsible for helping for handling the levy and remitting to the Victorian state. If you're not using Hospitable, I know there will be some here today that have joined that have seen the opportunity to join this webinar across different Facebook groups and that kind of thing. If you're not using Hospitable, we really recommend you reach out to whoever you are using to help you take direct bookings to make sure that they're clear on exactly how they're going to be handling that in the next couple of weeks when it does come live on the 1st of January. I do have some great news for the Hospitable hosts that have joined us though, in that Hospitable will be showing this new levy to guests, and that we will be handling and remitting this on behalf of direct premium hosts. Like I mentioned, that direct feature, specifically direct premium, is becoming bigger and bigger globally, and we want to make sure that we're helping hosts handle any new levy and tax that we can on their behalf to help with automation like what we do with the rest of the product. So we will be handling this for direct premium users from the 1st of January. I'm pretty excited to say that this has actually been built. So Aaron, one of our engineers that works on direct, has been working very hard to make sure that we've got this built within the software and that it's going to be ready for the 1st of January when new reservations start coming in that are going to apply for this. Before we get into any Q&A, I really just want to make sure we're highlighting where you can learn more. So like I mentioned here, if you have specific questions, if you want to check out that ruling that Andrew mentioned, please scan this QR code. You can go to their website there and check out a ton of information that they've got that may touch on your kind of unique circumstance. And you can check out links to rulings, and you can also get a bit more information on the levy more generally. You can also go to our help center. As many of you know, we've got a really detailed help center that can give you a lot of the answers to your questions in advance. We do have an article here. So this is the link to the article with a bit more information on how we will be handling the new levy. And then also you can go from there throughout our help center to get way more information on all of our product. Andrew, are you unmuted? Did you want to mention something there?
No, all good.
Okay, awesome. So we have our first question from James on the Q&A. He's asked if Airbnb is responsible for applying the levy, how are we supposed to let them know a property should be exempt from the levy? You said we need to fill in a form. It's going to be provided. It comes in 2 weeks. This is quite urgent, and I think that is relevant for Airbnb and also direct premium hosts.
Yeah, absolutely. And James is completely correct. So where a booking is made via a platform for a property that is exempt from the levy, then absolutely the property owner needs to provide a declaration to the platform. The advice that Liz and I had been given was that the form would be live today. I saw a version of the form being distributed within our policy area again this morning, and I've provided a couple of minor comments to it. It can't be far away. The issue has been very much about declarations and commentary within the declaration, and part of that is about the provisions impose a joint and several liability if a declaration is made in error. So it's not just simply the property's exempt, and so it's been pretty important for us to be able to make sure that we get the wording right. And what I mean by that is that if I provide a declaration to Airbnb and the declaration is incorrect, then Airbnb and me as the property owner are jointly liable for any arrears of the levy. And so it's important for us to make sure that the declaration is absolutely clear in that space. And that's been partly why the delay. The other part of the delay is that, provisions were received royal assent on the 29th of October. But James is 100% right. As I say, the advice that I'd been given was that the form would be available on our website by today, but that's clearly not the case. But it can't be too far away.
That's great. Thank you so much for the extra context. Continuing on the exemption, I guess, theme, if a host or a property manager is not sure about how they should proceed in terms of an exemption, where do they go to get more information? Should they be reaching out to you guys, or is there somewhere else that's better directed for questions on that?
Look, they can certainly come to us as a first port of call, but the advice that we're giving at this point is that if people are unsure about whether they are exempt or not, that it's probably best. I mean, if in some instances, I've seen examples at the absolute extremes, yes and no, clearly exempt, clearly not exempt. There's a bit of stuff in the middle. The GST ruling is complicated. What we're suggesting is that for those ones in the middle where it's not necessarily clear, you're best to seek a private ruling from our office. And you've provided a QR code there, Ethan, to our website. When they're on the website, go to the search function in the top right-hand corner, type in private ruling, and it will take you to the part that you need to complete in order to seek a private ruling. The encouragement that I would give to people is not to guess. Don't guess. If you're not sure, seek a private ruling. And whilst you're waiting for the ruling, we are 2 weeks out. The levy applies for bookings made from the 1st of January. If you are going to apply for a ruling, make sure you charge your customers the levy, because if you get a positive ruling, you can then give them their money back. If you get a negative ruling, it's going to be very difficult for you to recoup.
Yes, definitely. And I think I would add a note there, and I know the question was initially framed in regards to Airbnb, but I would say the same for direct premium hosts that are joining. The direct premium side of us handling that for you basically puts Hospitable in the very same situation as Airbnb in that regard. So what Andrew's saying is that Hospitable are going to be joint and severally liable for those declarations. So I just wanted to give a bit more context on Hospitable's side as to how we will be
What are you
handling
thinking?
those. So so once that form is available, we will definitely have a link to that, so we can add to that help doc that I added before. There'll be a link to that form. Then there will be the ability for you to provide that form to us via support if you are exempt. So if you've gone through that process, if you're not sure and you've spoken to the Vic State office and you've confirmed that you are exempt and you've provided that then to us, we will have an action on our back end that will allow basically to process that exemption. So we can then do that for you to make sure that you're not charging that levy unnecessarily if you are exempt. So that's going to be the process on our side. Ideally, whenever we can enable hosts to do more themselves, we do. So ideally, we have the ability for you to basically mark yourself exempt directly on the UI. But for the fact that Hospitable will be joint and severally liable, it's not going to be readily available directly on the UI. So that gives a bit more context as to why it is a decision. So and the other thing is that Hospitable is also required to store those exemptions in case it ever needs to be investigated. So making sure that that form has been vetted and is completed is really important.
Can I just ask, Ethan? So will Hospitable be so when you receive a declaration from one of your clients, will you be asking them for further support to confirm the exempt status, or will you just be accepting?
So that's really interesting. Like we're in a tricky situation in that
You are in a
and
very tricky situation. Absolutely.
Yeah, so and that's across the board with taxes for us globally. That we're doing whatever we can to support, but we basically acknowledge that it is a dynamic and changing situation, kind of like what you guys are doing, and the fact that you're, I guess, acknowledging that it's still evolving, even though we're 2 weeks out. So my answer to that would be that is going to evolve as to when we're actually receiving those exemptions, because I haven't actually seen what that form looks like. So for me to be able to answer that is a bit tricky. I would just say that for the fact that we are taking on that risk alongside our host is really important.
Mhm,
So that goes along
mhm,
with our other feature sets involved with direct premium. So the fact that we're handling chargebacks for you on your behalf for your direct reservations, guest vetting, damage protection, that kind of thing, it really aligns with that. So it ensures that Hospitable is aligned with you, making sure that
mhm,
you're protected. But then at the same time, we need to make sure those exemptions are being done correctly. So
mhm,
yeah, that's a
mhm.
really interesting one, and it's a good question, Andrew. I think we're in the same boat with working to make sure that it gets through to the point that I guess
Yeah,
hosts and property managers and guests are all aligned when the time comes.
yeah. Do you want to let me? Can you? If you, I'm happy to show you what the form looks like. If you want to see it, if you
Yeah,
can
definitely.
give me the ability to share my screen. Now, what I will say is what I'm about to show you is a draft, right?
Sure.
It's a draft that I provided some comments on this morning, but it will give. I think it will put people at ease that it's not a complicated form. The complication with the form has been the declarations and the wording. But I'll show you.
Definitely.
Um,
I've stopped sharing now, so you should be able to share your screen, but let me know if you have any issues.
okay. Okay. Share. So you can see it.
Yes.
Yep. So simple stuff, right? So it's about acknowledging various things. There's some details about who you are. There are details about whether you're an owner or a renter. There are some details then about legal structure, and then the typical sort of stuff that you would be asked. Details of postal address, and then details of the property, and then tick the box in terms of which of the exemptions applies. And then provide uh, any necessary supporting documents and those sorts of things. So it's not a complicated form, and I know I'm flicking through it quickly, but the usual sort of stuff. And these are just tick the box sort of things. So um, yeah, it's not something to be afraid of, other than
Yeah.
making sure that people don't make a declaration where they're not sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
I really appreciate that, and you sharing that.
that's right.
You
Don't
did
tell
scroll through
anyone.
that quickly, but I would well, I was just about to
Yeah,
mention this is live streaming, so
it is.
um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's okay. I
but
think,
that's
like you
okay.
mentioned,
Yeah, no,
yeah, you're expecting
yeah.
that to go live kind of
That's
today
right. The
anyway.
bits
So
the bits that
it's
I've showed are pretty well set. So yeah.
yeah, awesome. I really appreciate that. We also have a question here from Jade from Ready Set Stay in Victoria. Will there be any changes we need to make with pricing or fees, etc., for direct? So this is, I guess, more a question for myself. Will
Hmm.
Hospitable take commission on the tax levy? Take 7.5% of the guests and passes to the government, so no change to our payout. So Jade, you're correct. The 7.5% is going to be added on top of, so you won't need to be changing your markups for direct premium. So in terms of the payout side of things, that's going to remain the same. It will be an additional fee charged to the guest directly. And Andrew, I imagine that is how the online travel agencies like Airbnb are going to be showing and handling the fee.
From the advice that we've been given, yes. I haven't heard of any booking platforms that won't be doing exactly what you've just said.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. The one thing I should mention there for Hospitable is that there is a difference between direct premium and direct basic. If you're listening and you're a direct basic user, as you'd be aware, that's not including any of the functionality that I've mentioned in terms of chargeback protection. We're not handling that reservation for you. We're not the merchant of record. We have no ability to, I guess, remit taxes on your behalf. We're not collecting those funds. So if you're a direct basic user and you're using that Stripe integration, that this is something that you are going to need to action. You're going to need
Right.
to alter your markup rates within the product to add that 7.5%. So that's a really good question, Jade. I really appreciate you adding that. And
Yeah.
if anybody else has any other questions, please don't hesitate to throw those in there. I appreciate the thanks there from people sending those our way to the hosts and panelists.
Yeah.
While we have you, Andrew, I would
Mhm.
love to just, I guess, pick your brain and Liz too on some of the other, I guess, frequent questions that you're getting asked and some of those I don't know, more niche situations that might come up that might be worthwhile covering here?
It's a pretty common one. I've got a couple of acres. I live on the property, got 3 cottages out the back. Council won't allow us to make them available for long stay. Are we exempt? And our response to that is, unfortunately, council restrictions don't change liability for the short stay levy. There is the exemption for principal place of residence, but where somebody's got a few cottages on the same land, unless the commercial residential premises exemption applies, which is likely not to be the case, then the levy will apply. Other questions that we've been asked, and I might let Liz talk a little bit about this, is where some people can make a booking and include add-ons. There might be like a firewood package or those, or a massage or those sorts of things. Liz, did you want to sort of add any commentary in that space?
Yeah, so I really, it's around the questions regarding the booking fee and what that entails. And the questions that we get are, I guess includes GST and cleaning, but then obviously some premises or accommodation places provide optional extras. So, for example, hampers or like firewood if there's, a fireplace, things like that. I guess the advice that we're standing with at the moment that we've been given is any optional extras, so things that a guest can't opt out of, basically, no, don't attract the short stay levy.
Correct.
So that's it's kind of in reverse. So as long as the guest can opt out of it, it doesn't form part of the booking fee. If they've got that choice, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's a very common question. And then the other one, I guess, which I probably wanted to point out was just, Ethan, your presentation. I mean, I'm sure most people would know that with bookings short term, it's less than 28 consecutive days. So we've had questions pop up where, well, what about if they extend it to 30 days or 31 days? What happens there? So with the short stay levy, it's less than 28 consecutive days. So if someone chooses to extend their stay past that 28 days, short stay levy won't apply to that booking, that particular booking.
That's right. And liability triggers on the day of departure, which allows you then to exclude where there is an extension. The only other thing that I'd add, Ethan, is, and probably for the, was it basic, I think you referred to, for those that don't, if those clients are going to itemize short stay levy, so let's say they charge $100 a night plus $50 cleaning, whatever, and then they're going to charge short stay levy as a separate itemized amount, they'll come up with so it will be 7.5% of the total of the amounts above. When they're coming to pay their short stay levy, the amount they pay is calculated on the total amount paid by the consumer, which will also include the levy. So there's an interesting clause within the definition of total booking fee that includes booking for the part of the short stay levy. So effectively, the levy, if passed on directly, is payable on the levy. And there are some examples. There are some examples on our website that people need to have a look at to get an understanding of how that works, because it's incredibly unusual, and people complain about tax on a tax, but effectively, if a person increased their nightly tariff by 7.5%, then and didn't itemize, then the short stay levy would be payable on the total paid by the consumer. The moment it itemizes and becomes a separate, it becomes clear that there's a levy on a levy, is I guess how I would explain it. A couple of examples on our website, incredibly important for people that are managing this, and equally important for you, Ethan, as well, in terms of your business, because potentially you end up with a gap, because the amount you've collected as short stay levy from your consumer will be less than the amount that is ultimately payable.
Yes, definitely. That was one of the things that I picked up from your webinar, which I thought was really important. I think when this was initially kind of being proposed and went through government,
It wasn't clear.
those really niche circumstances where they couldn't possibly really be considered in advance, or it wasn't fully considered coming kind of out at that point. I think for the direct basic listeners and those reviewing this, I think the part that I'm hearing from that is that that can be tackled by using our markups feature. So if you're not familiar with how markups work, you're actually going into the product and you're marking up a particular channel. So you can go in and you can use your direct markup and you can add 7.5% to that particular channel, which is direct, and that will then add 7.5% to your direct website. So you're
Beautiful.
charging extra for direct to ensure that that is included within that nightly rate. So am I correct in saying that if that's added to the nightly rate, then you're not going to have a tax on a tax because it wouldn't then be itemized?
That's right.
Awesome. Awesome.
You're
We're
still
conquering it.
that's right. The bottom line still remains the same,
Yes.
but it's yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And that's
it's
yeah.
probably less offensive to do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think potentially less risky as well. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's a really good instance,
Yeah.
and it's I guess a reminder for us here at Hospitable to ensure that we are presenting that correctly, so that there is no gap at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Um, what are some other sort of common questions? Has there been other ones that have kind of come up that would be worth running through?
Um,
I think of
certainly.
the
Yeah.
concept of booking. So if I guess the property owner's doing a booking, I'm not sure with your system, Ethan, if they do all their bookings, so you're aware of all their bookings. But if there's properties that are obviously doing some bookings through yourself, but then they're doing their own direct bookings as well, I guess they just need to be aware of those ones that aren't, I guess, done through your program.
Yeah. Good point.
They're the ones also that would need to be registered themselves for those
Yes.
direct bookings that they
Bookings.
handle without
Yeah.
other intervention, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's a really interesting kind of a niche circumstance as well. I think
Very good.
for the vast majority that are using our direct premium feature, they kind of have they're wanting all of that to be automated for them. But
Yes.
for hosts that maybe are in that boat, how do they go about registering themselves if maybe they're on direct basic or they're in that situation?
Yeah. So again, through the portal on our website, that's not there. And again, we're being advised that it will be there on the 2nd of January, which is not ideal, but it's not a big deal given that the first return's not due until the 30th of April. But again, the registration process, and again, I have seen the walkthrough of it. It is pretty simple. The usual sort of information you need to provide: name, details of legal structure, etc., property address, estimate of fees to enable quarterly or annual payment. But yeah, it is important to distinguish between bookings taken directly and bookings taken via Hospitable or any other platform provider.
Or any other.
Yeah,
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 definitely. Okay.
and
So
and I
the
think
ability,
yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say the ability to register will be available on your website come January, and then
Mm-hmm.
that'll be like basically 3-4 months in lead time to ensure that
Yes, that's right.
everything's filled out and completed there. Yeah, awesome.
Correct. That's right. Yeah, yeah. First return for the larger providers, be it platforms or individuals, where they're expecting short stay fees of more than 75 grand for the year, will be due 30th of April. So hence
Okay, and
the registration delay, as I say, not ideal, but not a deal breaker.
yeah, sure. And can you break that down a little bit more for us for maybe the smaller self-managers that might be in the situation on direct basic?
Mm-hmm.
Is there if they're below that 75,000, how does
If
that
they're
work
below
for them?
75, they're annual, so they will pay. They will lodge one return a year, and they will make
Yep.
one payment a year, and that return and payment will be due 30th of January 2026.
Okay,
But
excellent.
just because you're not
And
registered doesn't mean you shouldn't be collecting the levy, because your liability will
definitely.
still exist. Yeah.
definitely. And there's no minimum threshold to qualify for the liability.
No.
So it doesn't matter that you're earning less than 75,000. You still need to collect to ensure that that's
Correct.
getting paid. It's not like
Correct.
GST,
There's
maybe
no
you're
threshold.
below a threshold. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No.
That's, I think, really important clarification too.
There's no tax-free threshold. That's right.
Yeah. The 75,000 really is just determining whether you're going to lodge
Frequency.
quarterly or annual.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's right.
But I think it's really important to note that the liability starts from the 1st of Jan. So really any bookings that are made after the 1st of January 2025, you need to be collecting the levy,
That's right.
ready for that part of it. And then the lodgement and all does come later on. But it does begin from the 1st of January 2025.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you
I think
so
there's another
much.
question I might just point out that any current bookings or any bookings that have been made before the 1st of January 2025, there is that transitional period. So basically any bookings current already been made or any bookings made from today right through to the 31st of December 24, they're not short stay levyable. They're fully exempt. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. That's very helpful and important to highlight. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think that might be us for the Q&A from the audience. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to highlight before we wrap up here?
No, look, just happy for you to share our contact details, Ethan, with any of the people that are online. So that if they do want to follow up with us directly or via you, more than happy to help out in that space. As we say,
yes,
fully appreciating we're 2 weeks away from commencement.
Yes, definitely. And I think I've got the slides there with the link to the Victorian State Revenue Office website. Please, if you're not sure, jump on there, check out more information. There's a ton there, like I mentioned, run through it and then reach out to either us or Andrew and Liz and get clarification if you're not sure. Okay, thank you so much, Andrew and Liz.
Thanks,
Ethan. Thanks, everybody else. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.